Nipa kunle namdol shing yunden gungi genbambu simchen gungi nyen chikbu tamche kenla gun chansi omeni chegi inge podane dusum sangye gungi ngu rasam choku ngasuma tenzebe zawe lame shabla so 정말 담비 추른 버치 냠슬렘비 꿀룽 삼보 니중기 삼바당 장줍기 센당 템비거니 나랑 나주 럽종 장기 유 삼비 삼바 잠시 마인버 담비 추디 퇴바당 삼비 냠슬링기 유 삼비 삼바당 템비거니 담비 추 셈버슈
Let's start by giving rise to the most excellent pure motivation, that of renunciation and bodhicitta, thinking that in this Dharma session, I'm not just merely studying a Dharma, sacred Dharma, but actually I am practicing the Dharma by means of listening and reflecting on the teachings.
나가서 가상 땡주 Gyud Lama 기더니 생등기 값을라 된 넘버 숨이 옆에 나니 숨바 땡주 세기 되니 다 땡주 세기 나라 추 세기 된다 지어버려 추스나다 gyurwatepa tulbiki nekapni matulbi nekaptang ngimbe nekapni sangbeki nekaplaya gyurwam shebachila gogire seki tilichi chumbare tadi tenjoki gobayang res 다 최벌 제발라더니 간데스 추고 그래서 두 람게 림바질라 때는 추고 그래서 델레 트니 아니 가서다 차지 말람나네 손샤베게 람게 림베 걸기 된세 나다고 지키여 바디 돌디돌듯이 마쉬운 거래 다 대나네 가서 당보 람기 땡디더니 쉬스니 니바 덴데게 람도제기 시랍 넘버 숨기 걸라 쉬베가브레
So at the moment we are still looking at the explanation of the title of the treatise, Tantra Shastra, right? The treatise of the highest continuum. So we already finished the explanation of the two parts of the title, and now we are looking at the part of Shastra in Sanskrit, or treatise, right? And the word Shastra, or treatise, in Tibetan consists of two syllables. When Tibetans translated that term Shastra into Tibetan, they put together two syllables with two different meanings, two words. And presently, what we are looking at is at the meaning of the term Chö, so ten Chö, right, which is part of the treatise. So what is meant by Chö in Tibetan? Chö means to transform, to change the outlook, the being, right? We're changing the confused states of mind, transforming them into unconfused states of mind. We're taking the negative states and transforming them into positive. This is actually the meaning of Chö, and this is the purpose of a treatise. Any treatise, right, has that purpose of transformation, of change. Then we ask a question, but how that change has to take place? And the way we are transforming our being, our lives, is by practicing the path, right? And here we're looking at the stages of the path. So from this discussion of the how to transform our mind, which is the purpose of a treatise, we then went to the discussion of the stages of the path. And we have seen that there are 5 stages, right, as they have been outlined in the Mahamudra Inspiration Prayer. And so that's what we have been concerned in the last few Dharma sessions. Among those 5 stages of the path, we have already discussed the first one, which is concerned with the support for the path. And in the last few sessions, we have been looking at the second stage of the path, the one that is concerned with the 3 types of wisdom, 3 types of insight that we need to develop in order to accomplish the path. So,
다 람도지기 시랍들라더니 퇴섬 곰숨기 시랍 넘바 숨여변나니 더니 다 가상 아주 퇴비 시랍당 삼비 시랍디 쉬니 다 드링야니 숨바 곰중기 시랍스 디콜란 넘마 쉬인스
when we speak about this insight of wisdom, prajna, right, we have actually 3 types of wisdom on our path. The one that comes from us studying, the one that comes from us reflecting or integrating the teachings, and the last one, the one that comes from our practice of meditation. And we have already covered the first 2, right, the explanation of the wisdom that comes from study and from reflection. And today I will further continue with the explanation of the 3rd type of wisdom, the one that derives from our practice of meditation.
나 가장 아주 시랍디 양다바지 랑귤레 깨발라더니 덤바시디 야버지 냠린지고 그래서니 슈바레 아데 나니 양 직진이 중에 스시더버지 젤 라데긴 소더버 직진이 슈게 가인스나다 켄나바만제 끼릭 셴바당 리슌 셴바당 수수기 지속기 yap종의 신바인도 양된줄라 도서지 된데 강의 연습하래 배나 가상 아주 찍디다 책을 믿은 된라된 슬라베다버지기네야 된조다 배나 아주 낭취 작용되다 지단의 책을 땡고 그러봐 라과도다 켄남베게더니 제가 최디 아주 Eastern 서로 Eastern culture다 Eastern concept of 지다 더니 딘데게다 최단 절베게 리슌기 딘데게더니 망고치어래 디인디 딘딘다 켄나바기 책딘조지 베나 산스크리트나라 디샤바디 베겔라 조규 베겔라 예바디 양자 인질라 규르 다대단한 신 게이셴발라 규 샤교디 로기 예바인디 딘딘디스 깔레카보 용그레 nge pesun da ji shu bai na tsigla mi tun la tun se di pena nga zu bebe gi peche gi tsiki na la ja se ji di sha yo na tunye gi ja yo wa ani kerangi inji la pha gyur sha de ti sin gyur wa te nor bata mare ti ta ta re ine yang ta nga beba ji yimbe chane kerangi ja se la yong de samala de gi den da wa ta tunji da wa de nge lo la karisha ge resna ta shingi porbe ge na la de ni cha dang ja dang oma dang mar te sha wa de ji ngan su ina sup da wa nge lo la sha yong ra nge ja se di de ji la sam no ko ge ta den da ta kerang jaga da wa chimba ina ni ya 제 지니 다워 호마 다워 ngamochi lo la sha gere ani kerang sta wa ina ni ja sa la byong de ti sa la byong de ji ti bek so da da ya de de ji kangda sik de de garang re de ne ya ngana zu misu mi na de ge donda de lo la sha yo de bet keba chombo ji cha ro do wa da din zu de ni gyurdang nor ba da wa de de ka ya ma de ine ya da ngana zu 다 지 지소 민다와 다 리슌 민다와 다 곰시 민다와 덴데지 차디디 대단데 숨기 직지 베제 당겨래 그렇게 열었대 이내야 된다디 지 로레 샤용도 직바샤레디 가버려도 와 라버도다 최게 나라 깨제 시용도 망고직 남중 알아서게 시라시라게 삼로땅 마투베드네 망보용도 아니 그래서 덴덴 깔레카고 용세 바래 딘딩에 가사에 테마 가시 쉬 계란족이 디 규르샤바 짬줄라 마템바체니 와 트랜슬레이트 깡발라 마템바체니 디 코랑기 디 컨셉지여와 베는 베바기 자 시기도나 아니 베바 코랑기 자 시디 간디질레 시기도 디 아니 컨셉 디 카레레스네 디 아니 고알린트베디야 내가 좀 못 오시던 것도 대단 대송기 책망부 연구를 아주 최근한다. 뒤에다 책을 밑에 던랐던 세디 다 돌디나 지 규르샤바 짬질라 마틴 바치니 디 코랑기 겹종기 컨셉이 고알린디 내가 좀 버려 땡도
In the last Dharma session, I have spoken about four reliances, the four statements that the Buddha has given in terms of what we should rely on in order for the perfect, really genuine wisdom and insight to take birth in our being. And I would love just to a little bit to elucidate on some points of those four reliances, just to make it more clear. You know, as what happens in this Dharma teachings, right? We all come from very different backgrounds, different cultures, and we use different languages. And because of that difference in terms of our bringing, our culture, we can have some misunderstanding. So we can run into some problems. And so when the Buddha said, do not rely on the words, but rely on the meaning, right? Of course, we do rely on the words. Like when we study the Dharma, we can't go about without relying on the language. But what happens is that Dharma, the sacred Dharma, the teachings, very much connected also with the culture. And here we mean Eastern culture, right? An Eastern type of concepts that originated in the East. And now when we take the language of the Dharma and the words and like first of all translated them from Sanskrit into Tibetan, right, long time ago. Then what is happening now, we take in the Tibetan terms, translating them into English, and from English here, and for example in these teachings, then the words of the Dharma being translated into many different languages. So we're going from Sanskrit into Tibetan, into English, into other languages. So, you know, we can run into a situation, kind of a lost in translation type of situation, right? The kind of a little bit of troubles. What kind of troubles? For example, I'm gonna utter one word in Tibetan, which is cha. And well, the translator going to translate that word into English. And how? What word will she use? Well, she will use the word tea, the one we drink, right? Cup of tea, because cha means tea, and that's correct. I mean, right? Cha is tea. That's fine. As far as it, just as long as we just are concerned with the language itself. But can we really remove language from the culture and different concepts of the culture? We can't, right? So what happens now, for example, right? And tea is just an example. So now when and I am a Tibetan, hear this word cha, right? Okay, tea. What kind of image arises in my mind? What kind of concept, not only the word, but what sort of feeling and the concept that I'm taking from hearing just one word, tea, cha? Well, I right away picture a wooden bowl filled with some, yes, tea leaves, but mainly it's going to be butter, milk, and salt, what you guys going to call a soup, right? But that's tea. That's my tea, right? It's a Tibetan tea. And when I hear word tea, I right away think of this kind of, right, this tasty, salty, buttery drink in my wooden bowl. Now, if you are an Indian, for example, and I'm gonna use the same word, cha, tea, you right away picture what? A cup of nice masala tea, right? Sugar, a lot of sugar, milk, some cardamom, some, other spices. That's gonna be your tea. And if you come from the West, perhaps you just, when you hear word tea, you're gonna think of a tea bag that you're gonna just, right? Well, yeah, that you're going to use to make your cup of tea. So what happens here is that it's the same word, right? But we have three different people, and this is, of course, just example, coming from three different backgrounds and cultures, and the images and the concepts and the whole idea behind this one word gonna differ drastically, right? So the same word has different connotations in different cultures, different backgrounds. Now, of course, this is just about tea, but you see, the Dharma language has a lot of those sort of words, right? It's not only about tea, it's actually about Dharma language. And again, when I'm going to use those Dharma terms, Dharma terminology, you hear a word, but really what you need to really understand is not just a word that you're going to memorize and remember, but you have to understand what is behind this word, what this word is actually trying what is trying to make you understand. What are the concepts behind this term? What are the actual idea, right? Because it's going to be different. If I just use the English word of Dharma, you might have some completely different connotation and different picture and different idea. So when we're studying Dharma, therefore, it's not only learning those words, it's really the most important, again, in short, right, to make it very short, what is the most important is not to rely on the language and the words, but rely on the actual meaning, those concepts, those connotations, those real ideas that those words trying to transfer across different cultures, across different backgrounds. So
Peshana concept kashi jisok jigi nangla shuk chenpo yo debati jiso shenpa nangla digi concept kona yo mare nge pechi shu na nganzu jidang eastern lakpar tu pepa daba ina nganzu loneliness se tsik chidwa tadi shivuji pechi dangirwa nganzu nupchola di tsik di pepa la yo mare gyurtuk mare kaysa nganzu di concept di yo mare 딩상 gyurda gyuriyar de ine di tagas ko tsikzui pechi tangi mada misuji ke pechi tangi mare tsik sawa so bare 대단 대승 망보 용서 봐. 가시 양 벼발라 여발라 늪초라 켜내 매바 되네 망보요. 학벌도 취하게 계지시 갑시다.
Or for example, some concepts are entirely absent in some cultures. They just, some cultures have that concept and others just don't have. They don't have a concept, and so of course they don't even have a word for that concept. For example, in the East, and of course especially I'm talking about Tibetan language, Tibetan culture, Tibetan right, Tibetan and society. In Tibetan language and thus in Tibetan society, there is no word and there is no concept of loneliness. Loneliness, something we use quite a lot in the West, it's entirely absent. Well, okay, these days, modern Tibetans, they did make up a new word to translate loneliness. They did add it to the dictionary, but no one uses it. Most people, most Tibetans don't even know this word, right? So it doesn't count, like really. And so just like that, there are also a lot of Dharma words in Tibetan that bring across the meaning connotations that are absent in other cultures.
그래서 되니 다 내가 나신 게 가장 아주 당된당에 된세 계제시에 값을 해야 되니 다 등상 아주 계란속이 산제긴 도다버지 규르샤버지도 로바이나 아니 직제직니지 로 paragraph 카시지로는 알레 산제기 되네 송샤 알레 산제기 디송도시네 람사 타 쪼쪼 지규요 말에 산제기 도디 술라 송바레도 산제기 도디야 디와쿠겐 슈겐드 수레도 디와쿠겐 코랑기 백그라운드 가르레샤 산제기 되네 송백갑술라 코랑기드니 간소이나다 링시세그와 background story or dinzula dini tozo chi samlo tani dini dendadla tajuji de kechumbare di mato yan cikje kashi loni dinde sungdu dire di maresne tajuji shapaina dini dangdendang e dindisu notwe dang hakbardo dini sanji ka mangbo chila galwa thongde dini tezu mangbo yongde dini kanga yongsibare.
And likewise, when the Buddha said another of these, four statements of reliance, do not rely on the provisional meaning, the one that requires interpretation, but rely on the definitive, ultimate meaning. Now, many sutras have been translated at least into English, right? And they also exist in other languages. So now when you open a sutra, let's say you read a few words or maybe a few paragraphs, and what's important for you is not to say, okay, I got it. I just to decide just by reading a few words or paragraphs that you understood what Buddha was trying to say. What is really important here is to zoom out and to see what we call the background story, which is actually usually in the beginning of each sutra. There is this kind of description of where did the Buddha give teachings? To whom? Most important, who is the audience? Who is the one who requested the teachings? And what is the background of the one who requested the teachings? So what was basically in the mind of the Buddha when he was given these teachings? Because it's very much relates to the one who asks the teachings and asks the questions. So this is the background picture story. And we need to read it. And only by understanding all this context, we can try to understand the Buddha's message. Just by reading a few words without really being concerned with this overall picture of the overall story, we're not going to really understand what the Buddha actually was trying to say. So we can confuse in this way the provisional meaning with the definitive, right? The kind of this relative temporary meaning with the ultimate. We can conflate those meanings, and we can end up having only more doubts after reading or receiving this kind of teachings.
다든수 드니 아주 럽존 장계이나 남규 까탐제 공박 갈매도 똑바 세그와 대바 침보단 중 아니 오마 탐제 공마기 람텍 다 dorдина 가리세거레스나 또저지 가서 계랑 당기 수만에 줌 아웃 제니 풀 픽처 때에 되게 좀 버레스 봐 아니 지 충충 찍으랑라 가대 봐야나더니 갈리 먼저 풀 픽처 때 통해라 안 또스 갈리 가고 온 거래 안다 디티스 럽존자 아니 개겐들라 깨차티 안티 칸테레스니다 냠뉴 요겐들라 봐 깨제티고 도 아틴 소거디
In this way, for us, the disciples who study the Dharma, it's important to understand what was said, that all the teachings of the Dharma do not contradict each other or one another. There's no contradiction, let's say, between all the various vehicles and various sets of teachings, because the law, so kind of the low teachings of the low vehicle, so to say, they are nothing but just a support for the following higher teachings. They are really absolutely indispensable to uphold and support the higher teachings. So there's no contradiction really between those various teachings, but for us, therefore, it's really important to zoom out and see the full picture. Otherwise, if we just focus on one statement, one type of teaching, then we will see that there's a lot of contradiction with others. And, it's really important to clarify this and ask our questions to masters, teachers who practice, so that when we study and have all these kind of questions, this sort of, misunderstandings by not being able to see the full picture, it's very important to clarify with the teachers so that we can actually learn the whole context and be able to see the full picture. Really important for all of us.
다더니 남실에 midun 예실했던 세베 값이야 되니 다 쪼고디 개치쇼디 수수기 다대기 300기 뉴바당 300기 체디 리미티드 임바직 하고 해야 되겠죠 뭐래 그봐 수수기 셈세디 셈단 22기 대체비기 셈세쇼 봐 디긴 디 리미티드 임바직 안주이나다 체단 된 바소다 보시러 봐 거기 갈라강 삼지마도 초바체 두고요 말해. 되니 다 게치쇼 찍디 간주 다 가산 슈바레 도디나다 셈세디 니진기 based on the 니진기 framework 와 이시세디 딜레 데바치라 세기어레 다 단다랑 람상 이시세디 간데 이면지 나라주 시라시라 삼노땅 마투바 있네양 나랑기 따데기 셈세디기 통샤바당 타제샤바디 니진기 framework 기 낭라 레샤세디 수수하고고래 디인디다 도디나 남실라 미딘 실라된 세베 값을라 타마딜라다 수수기 가르쳐 거르베다 가르쳐 거르베 당하나서 있는 인식해 되지 당하죠 it doesn't make sense 이거와 수수기 sense 이거와 어디게 라와레 파 도고 또지 되라지 아주 깝깔아 comfort zone 더 친구도 왔어서라 you have to go beyond the comfort zone 세이로와 어딘데 티스다 로고 치스 지고 왔다 스스기 니징기 팀당 퉁금민도 선에 쌈지 김신도 지는 가득이요 말에 딜레 또서지 니징기 라와당 dualistic framework dan dualistic comfort zone le chilo da 또서지 도트 고글 딘지 삼탄 고고 남실라 미디 실라 된 세베갑서.
Another of the four reliances was that we shouldn't rely on our consciousness, but we should rely on our wakefulness, or this type of timeless awareness. So here, what we need to understand mainly is that the power of our ordinary conceptual minds is limited. Our minds are limited. They can guess kind of how things are only to some degree, right? But not going to really fully understand how things are. They can just understand, kind of like almost like guess, sort of fathom things to just very limited degree. As I have explained last time, the minds, our ordinary conceptual minds, based on a dualistic framework. And wakefulness, this type of awareness, primordial awareness, is beyond dualistic framework. And at the moment, we can't really genuinely understand how this wakefulness is. Well, we don't have access to it fully, so we can't. But what we can and what we should understand is how limited our ordinary minds are. Right? So we can't really understand how wakefulness that is beyond our conceptual mind is, but what we can understand and see is that our conceptual minds are very much limited and very much confined by this dualistic framework. And at the end, like what is said in English, oh, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes we use that, right? Type of statement. So sense. It does make sense. What is sense? Here is the question: is this dualistic framework? This is sense, this comfort zone, right? How it's this kind of square in which we learn to think and operate. That's all, right? So when we may say sense, it makes sense. It makes sense within this kind of parameter that we have been confined to, which is dualistic framework, or as Khenpo said in English, comfort zone. And we need to go beyond. We need to have kind of guts to go beyond, right? Beyond this dualistic framework, beyond this comfort zone. So we need to go out of that, transcend that. And that's what is meant by relying on wakefulness rather than on our limited conceptual minds.
That take up sola tozo chi marasu namgyun ki ego ki rigidness chigarwa. Didi tozo pa tozo dende chi takpo di tozo soft wa charu di nge kasan shui tozo chi blissful sense of confusion senamindu da dende yungre yungsi barwa. Da di ani nge kasan shui ba di healthy confusion is shira ngana so simda che ko mares.
Right, I have mentioned this a few Dharma sessions ago, that when this rigidness of our ego relaxes a bit, softens, we can get a little bit lost, right? Because we usually operate from this very much rigid sense of ego, knowing everything. And when it sort of lessens and softens, we can get a bit confused how things are, right? Because there's no this sort of core of ego anymore. And that's fine. That's actually a good one. That's a good confusion.
Chidang anzu inchila sikshidwa easy going said. Wa easy going said yapura ine ya ko confusion mare. Ine ya ko rigidness tishira yo mare korang larwa. Penang anzu miji chala dawas new gugu na. 당본이나 빼 preconcept 숙청버지니 가 인지 민직 디랑기 브란 촌다 딘드랑 고고도 슬람나 아니 칼레카보 용도 봐 아니 거랑나다 nga tindich 고고도 아니 시라시라 개바 민도 스나다 easy going 세그로 봐 말해 이네야 디 confusion 두부 두자 말아 봐 다티 디스 개바도 쇼고도 봐 베나 미치기 잘라지 녀고데 코 가레 녀고 가레 녀먹고 빼 고톰네 데바이나 다디 confusion 세그로 봐 근데 easy going 말아 다 미치기 잘라지 녀고고 여데 이네야 콜 인지 민지 천도 덴드라이 바 브랜드 덴드라이 바 고고요 말 가레나 코랑기지 adapt 제투 거봐 디 confusion 말에 디코 easy going 와 디니 다고에 발야 나나 개발 첨부도 봐
Awesome. Actually, here we need to separate what I'm trying to say about this softened rigidness of ego is not really confusion where we end up being per se. That state is not really confusion. It's rather being easygoing, as again Khenpo used beautifully in English, which is really good, right? There's no rigidness there, and it's not confusion. For example, right? If we had some idea of what we need to buy, and if we have a very rigid, strong preconception that what I need to buy has to be this brand only, and this color, and this model, like really only this, and then we're gonna have hard time if we can't find exactly that model in this color and this shape, etc., right? This is not being easygoing. Now, if we don't have this rigidness in us, and we're sort of more open, more at ease, right? This is not confusion. We just arrive there and we sort of can adapt. Okay, maybe not in this color, maybe in that one. We are flexible. It's not being same as, okay, I have no idea what color I want. I have no idea what shape and brand I want. This is confusion, right? We're really completely lost. This is not the same. Easygoing is not the same as confusion. It's similar because there's no this kind of rigid guidelines operating in both of the situations, but the confusion is when you're completely lost and not knowing what to do. But here, easygoing is kind of being open to whatever arises and being very adaptable, right? And there's a difference, therefore, between confusion and easygoingness, and we need to go with easygoing one.
디 내가 좀 보시죠. 등상기 뒤설랑 안줄라 choice 쉬우죠 봐. 디인데 갑슬라 the burden of choice 디요래. 디게 깝깝라 바란줄라 confuse 쉬고도 봐. 안 최라야 딘딘딘 용식이래. 람의 주베 갑슬다 람데 시라 갸좀 보러 봐.
Well, these days we have this burden of a lot of choice. Right, there's so much choice. That's a real burden. So that's why this is applicable very much these days. And of course, here it's not about going shopping. I'm not teaching you how to go shopping. I'm really saying, like in Dharma, again, there is so much choice also, and we need to be adaptable, flexible, and easygoing with that.
라서 다딩이 가상기 디 덤바다 덤바시단 데베코니 슈예 가르선다 켄남바 리슝다 다딘데 카가지니 촌이 리슝 사와질 주구연디 덴덴티스 강에디 마용으로 봐 안딘디니 아니 든저 슈셔나야 디스 강에세게 펜토스기를 에디는 슈바이.
So I have taken some time to explain these 4 points of reliance, dependencies, because many of us, all of us here come from different cultures, and what happens is that we are here concerned with a very specific Tibetan Dharma culture, and we come from different cultures, so we're sort of learning this really completely new, not only language, not only the terms, but really new culture, new concepts. And therefore, it could result in a bit of misunderstandings and confusion. And so I thought it's really important to clarify and make it easier for us to have this transition from our backgrounds and cultures into this one.
라소 다 검중기 시랍 되니 다 삼중기 시랍디 랑귤라 깨차베 젤라 다데 아니 가르쳐 그러베 다 삼중기 시랍디 이 가산 슈바나시 뇽와단 대바요 대바바 아니 뇽와디다 똑배게 ngow다고 지라 차비 체도라 가르치고 그래서나더니 검중기 시랍디 랑귤레 깨고 그래 숨바래.
Going back to our three types of wisdom. So we have covered now the second one, the one that comes from reflection. And by reflection, what I meant is this experiential, connection with the Dharma, having really experienced the teachings, right, in our own being, integrated the teachings with our own being. So now, how to transform that experience that we have into stable realization? The next step. Well, in order for that transformation to take place, the wisdom that comes from meditation has to arise in our being.
다디 간데레스는 답변나 당보 간주 다 고대워지는 미다고다고질 차샤바이나 다 미다과세디 가리임에 하마고 용두 미시비 디방안줄 열어봐 되니 다 라마다오 지금 꿈드니 아니 미다과세디 가리레스니 간주 당보다 롱당 릭발라 퇴바지 용두 값을라 아니 미다바 임바디 하고마디 퇴비시라 차르바 다 있나야더니 다 미다바 간데 있나 다 미다바라 망보여레 락바 균기 미다바 타와 춘이기 미다바 그러바 아니 독바테수 망보 용세 바레 미다바 인사 말에 네 가상 가르제바디 디링 팅기도 당공다 디링랑아 케바 민도 ngaran 찍바레샤 삼삼다보다 되니 디 가르쳐 그래 균디 찍봐요 봐 균라 규와 되게요 말아봐 아주 통낭들라 다 된대기 김세 망버지니 미다바 카시데 인사를 때 카시 인사 말이 섬섬다보다 다 된대 태좀 망보 준 거래 다 태좀 된저 좀 배체들라더니 가산 라바나시 라미기 맹아라더니 삼바지 용데 값을다 오니 다니 미다바 세디 스스기 무슨 통나야래 마통나야래 뒤제기 최지 이네 송데 랑신기 깨니 깨지라 인그루와 태바디 춘이레샤 삼삼다버지 아니 태좀 쳐두고 다디 삼중시럽 자고라 되니 다 당보 태중기 시럽세디 고와 삼직이 바래 다 삼중기 시럽세디 가상 라바나시 오니 소소기 뇽와단 자룡디 소소기 고라 딱아버지 통 토발라 녀마지 통 되니 갑갑라 갭나 갑갑라 포와디에 칼라충중지 사는 딩마디 중 소소 파마 빙자 된저 림바 신도드니 시바 된저 통용되다 오니 미다바세디 다지 오니 레샤 삼삼다워지 뇽와슈 좀 보실 내용데 삼중기시라 합시다 바로 다 덴데기 삼중기 셰랍디한테니 양코 랩스지 양 라두고요. 템포시라 연거요 말아. 가르레선 다둥고 똑같이 차요 말에 뇽와 삼시라 봐. 다 덴데기디니 뇽와 코랑기디니 도디나다 퇴바당 삼백기 태좀 잘 샤바들 녜바지 녜바래. 알아줄라. 녜시시 녜바래. 다 녜시디기디니 균경 맞들라 가리세게 그랬으나 녜시디 균다나 템보 믿와. 배는 가란 수지 미시리에서도 오늘에 삼는 양띠도 제일 라루고도 와 거야 양 딱바다고 지금 삼로 리뷰용도 와 근데 멤버진은 딱 오늘 다니겠지 미닥바스디 미기 듄라 두 통되기 위해서 잡으시 드니 차벌 제발라다 가르쳐고래 딘데기 미닥바스에디 드니 균경고거래 디간라 냠바샤고거래 딜라 가르세기 그래서나더니 검중기 시랍슬라바래
Let's take, for example, the teachings on impermanence. When we start, now let's go back, retrieve to before the first wisdom even arises in our being. So first we start with the with the obscuration of ignorance, right? Not knowing anything. Let's say then we go to a teacher and ask about impermanence, and we get some explanations based on different statements and reasonings, scriptures, right? And we understand, oh, impermanence is like that. That's the first type of wisdom or insight, the one that comes from studying or from receiving the teachings. Like we can learn there that there are two types of impermanence, for example, right? The teachings state that there's a coarse impermanence of everything changing in terms of its continuity, and there's a very subtle impermanence on the most subtle level of the nature or intrinsic nature of all phenomena. And here what happens is that we understand it, but at the same time, right, at the same time, this understanding is very intellectual, and so it does not really penetrate our doubts. Okay, it cleared away the first obscuration of not knowing. Now we know, but we still have the other obscuration. The next layer is of having doubts, like, well, yeah, I know the teachings say that, but look, I remember what happened to me yesterday, so this continuity of me from yesterday to today must be the same. I must be the same person, right? The one that woke up yesterday, woke up today, it's the same. It's seeming, it seems to us that there's no difference in terms of continuity. So we have a doubt, therefore, because it seems to us that way, right? So now, to clear away that next layer of obscurations, this is the doubts, we need to receive pif instructions from a teacher, right? Like really from our Lama, we need to get this very essential pithy instruction. And whether, we see it or not directly, impermanence, that's to say, when we get a real confidence, certainty that, what, all conditioned phenomena, from the moment they come into being, they change. Moment by moment by moment, they change, and that's just a fact. That's just the nature of all phenomena, no matter what. Whether I can perceive it or not, this is a fact. It's given that that's the way. Now, this is already the insight that comes from our integration of the teachings, from our reflection. Because the first intellectual understanding was not enough, right? It has to be transformed into experiential relationship with the Dharma, into experience. It happens, remember, I already mentioned, it happens when we look at the mirror and see gray hair. Or we get this back pain now that was not there before. Or before we were totally able to digest this kind of food and now it gives us stomachache, right? Or we see our close ones dying, passing away, right? It's really experiential. Now we can't deny it. It's really, really present in our life. But this experience of impermanence is not stable because it's not realization. It's just an experience. So one day we really remember when someone dies, it really shocks us, right? And we take it to heart, death. But a few days later, we're not going to sustain that. We forget, we move on. We lose that experiential understanding of impermanence. And so in order then to transform this experience into a very stable realization, right, to move from experience to realization, we need to take this certainty, the one that we have gained from study and reflection, and we need to sustain it continuously. And we do that by means of a practice of meditation, right? Otherwise, we're just going to forget. Every time we're going to forget and again think, oh, things are permanent. Not think, but we will believe in permanence. So to really, really counteract the last obscuration, then we need to transform our experiential understanding into continuous and stable realization by means of taking the certainty that we have gained and continuously sustain it, maintain it, rest in that certainty, really meditate on that certainty, so that the wisdom that comes from meditation can arise in our being.
다 짜와 왕도 지디 가장 책 숨바들와 검중 외기 내도 지신살스니 검중기 시랍디기 내룩 고와 짬당 뇽와 짬지 되니 다 지신살스도 템포당 세버지 수그레 숨바레 다 되기 되니 즉 고와당 뇽와 짬지 마임바를 똑바디 되니 깨비거니 과랑가리 임바디 세버지니 톤이 되니 템포지 차로 그래 숨바다래.
This is also what is expressed in the third line of our verse in the Mahamudra Respiration Prayer, the one that addresses the third type of insight. It says, the light born of meditation illuminates the natural state just as it is. So now this explains that what happens with our practice of meditation is that intellectual understanding and experience will grow into extremely clear and stable realization of true nature of phenomena just as it is, right? It will not remain, if we meditate, it's not going to remain just as a mere intellectual knowledge or just kind of these temporary fleeting experiences, but rather it will become extremely stable, very bright, very clear type of realization.
다디나라 돈다조 니다오시도와 찍들라 곰세지 다한테니 니룩세지 니도와 다디니데레 니룩디 곰고 그래 숨 다데나네 당봉에 곰세데 도지 아마 디시슈기.
So in this line, we have two very important terms and thus important concepts, not only language-wise, but really the ideas. One is what is translated into English as meditation, and another one is translated as natural state. In other words, it's the verse says that we need to meditate on the natural state. So I'm going to start with explanation of how we should understand the concept of meditation.
다 곰세들 지단 쓰기 촌에 살론 당바이나 간주 베바기 곰슬라 그래 깝깝라더니 당주 산스크리트나 디아나 세기도와 되니 양 깝깝라 곰냠렌스니 되니 양 세기래.
Well, when it comes to this word itself, the word meditation, well, obviously it's English one. In Tibetan, we use the word gom. In Sanskrit, it could be dhyan, bhava, and sometimes we just say practice, right? I'm going to practice, right? We don't say I'm going to meditate, but we use the word practice.
나간주 베발라야 취직 지원되다 삼된세 당 띵예제세들의 단위만보다 딘좀 먹어봐 제라와 다 곧되어지나 Chidang concept of chi samlatang bai. Chidang si khorang la samlatang bai na kari sigyo resena. Kerang ki dunda kayang rungwa chikla, dunda yakpo chikla. Ta te kapsu yakpo sigyo rwa. Ngenpa ma yinpa. Dunda sangpo chikla lunga yi sumni yang ni yang du gomji cheba tila. Ta di sebo chikdang tenpo chi yongpa chedula. Yang ni yang du gomji cheba chikla sigyo re sungbare gom se di.
Of course, in Tibetan, we also have other words, terms like samten, which is like meditative concentration in English. We use that, or tenidzin, like samadhi. Again, we translate as meditation, right? Basically, there are many terms, but don't worry about that. We're not gonna go into those. Let's just be concerned now with this term used here. The word itself is used in this verse is gom. So what's the meaning of it? The meaning is that, well, we take some object which is really a good one, and by object we mean something we take something really meaningful and excellent, and this is not going to be anything negative or difficult, disturbing. No, something really, really wholesome. We take something really wholesome, something very good, and we habituate our body, our speech, and our mind to that very wholesome, very positive object, or that kind of meaning of that. It could be just a meaning, right? Object doesn't mean physical one, but something that we are concerned with, something that's very important and wholesome and meaningful, and we familiarize ourselves with it over and over and over again. That's in order to make that in order to kind of be for that meaning, for that object, for that thing to become extremely clear and stable for us. That's right, the meaning of meditation.
Tadi tini gom gyabe ki lakcha dawa de la ngaran zula ta daminda yore. Ina yang ta zogo di susu ki nga zu ta begyu nangden dawa cha shakwa na lu tang ta begyu nangden sinamina chidang nga zu nangba sanji pala kap kap la lu shuk chimbo becho tang ya tang, kap kap la nga shuk chimbo becho tang ya tang, kap kap la ani yi korang shuk chimbo becho tang ya. Ta ina yang gom siri zogo di yi re. Ina yang ta tools dawa di becho daminda re. Pena 아주다 지 차세 소다보다 되니 아지 류기 차게 제 소다보다 되니 류기 요글기 거니야 곰게 망부셔 봐. 다든지 만시 류 지당 나다 이 숨가 요래. 이내한테 류랍 탑시 자든 망부치도 봐. 대가나신당 아주 잘롱 투고 써야 되는 요 봐. 때 가시 양가 잘든도 지내더니 만드라 딘수 미다 당에 당 대에 당 대바든지 지거 WhatsApp 당에 된서 되니 가시에다 이 갑갑라 라고메다 어디데 요래 갑갑라 양 거랑 셈 라든지 되바메 봐 냠바니 강라 샤야 된데 요래 다든지 셈 비죠 당겨 봐 어다 된데다 거랑기 탑람 스나민도 투스디 아니 류가 이 갑갑라 치기 율리 비죠 당겨 요래 갑갑라 소소기 난기 남도 거랑 비죠 당다 담미데 되는 용거라.
So when it comes to building up the skill of familiarization with this wholesome, really very good and meaningful object, there are many tools in the shed of Buddhists. Like their kind of tool shed has a lot of different instruments that can be used. Many has to do with the different things to do with our body, so physical actions, such as, for example, prostrations, right? This is a tool that where we use our body, or maybe we do gestures known as the mudras, or different movements of the body in the practices of Chulkor and Salung, so the practices that have to do with aligning our channels, our winds, our essences, and so on. So this is more like the emphasis than on the body. Then we have other tools that, again, when it comes to meditation, it's again the tool here rather concerns with has to do with the speech. For example, like mantra that we repeat, or like really engaging in a serious recitation and accumulation of that mantra recitation, then it's really emphasis on the speech. On the mind, right? The tools where we emphasize the practices of the mind, visualization of the deities, or just resting in the open space without any conceptual elaborations whatsoever. There are many different tools. Of course, mainly it's the mind. For Buddhists, among all those different aspects, of course, the emphasis is very much, when it comes to meditation, on the mind. But again, not only. And so here, therefore, we can understand that what is being meditated upon could be any object, like could be outer object, or it could be inner, like our own thinking, our own thoughts that could be taken as the object, right? So there are many different tools or skillful means in this way to achieve this familiarization with the wholesome object.
Dini sosoki chorwa jorwa, sosoki sugyore, chorwa yore, pungbunga yorwa, suk chorwa dushi. Antega nanshingi miki suk tongo yore, nga danda amchoki kecha gogo yore, dinzu yang sense dinzu, wangchor, simchor dinzu ran pecho tangni gom japchogo yore. Dinzu yang digi ta chakin sogore be, kare sogore chashi chagdo wa, den roji.
We can also use other support for our practice of meditation, other kind of favorable conditions that will enable us to develop the skill of meditation. We can take our own sensations that arise in our body, but also anything that arises in our five aggregates, in our five, this physio-mental field of our body, of our feelings, of our consciousness, right, of our perceptions and so on. So, for example, right now, right, I have the senses that I use all the time, like with my eyes, I'm seeing the forms, with my ears, I hear sounds, right? We have the sense, the field of a lot of sensory experiences, and we can use those as the support for our practice of meditation.
lakwardo nganzu tekwa chimbo dang dini nganzu ta lojong dizu pe nyamle nganzu ina chi pendo chimbo nyuba chimbo dini dende nyamlin che ki tab mangbo so re penata pedaw chasha boyna nganzu chi nasa chi nagi yoni kingen lamker segrwa 당 아주 미세 나라 강에 망부 태기래. 라고도 녀마직 나라 아주지 강에 망부 태기로 봐. 강에 레레 태와다 딘주 베제다니 냠는 지기여 바래. 시라기 누바 첨부 된 거래. 딘줄라. 되니 강달 깽연바 탐지 곰기 다 차겐다고 지라 쇠니. 아니 냠는 지 딘주 시라기다 누바 첨부여래.
And especially in the Mahayana, that's the great vehicle, a lot of emphasis in practice of meditation is in the training our mind, which is known even very much by Tibetan term lojong, right? Training of the mind. It's extremely, extremely beneficial set of practices, very powerful, because we can practice them at any moment. And actually, there is plenty of opportunities in our daily life where we can practice mind training, because here what happens in mind training is that we take all these difficult, problematic aspects of our life and we transform them onto our spiritual path. And this is the practice of mind training. We get sick, get frustrated, all sorts of things, right, happen to us throughout the day. Many difficulties we experience, we encounter, and all of them can be transformed onto the path. They can become our Dharma practice. They should. This is the practice of Lojong, right? They actually aid these difficult, problematic circumstances. They aid our practice, right? They help our practice. That's so powerful, really. Right? This, practices of Lojong are so powerful, so beneficial in this way.
Pena nga zu mi pe adventurous chi na ko gi nyima chik di ya la le je ani kange kaya me nyima ya ko sha khala sa ma nye tin ko nyop to rong ro wa da tring da chan adventurous chan chung ma sons peche 장주 semba dende ge nyamlen nange de zula nyima ya ko do de na to nyop to do chung go yesa da ti nyamlen ge bok de ge ti min do wa da keng nemba chi the yong de ni anze ina da rough days se gro wa o dende re re the yong de ani kunzo gi ti mixe gi khona chung azu pe ne adventurous meal nyima kange the yong de ko de le chi mixe gi so wa shi le do wa o dende da wa chung go yesa re
Example, a very adventurous person who loves, right, all this adrenaline in one's life. If that person wakes up one day and there's nothing to do, it's a beautiful day, sun is shining, there's all this wonderful food, but there's no really anything that will spike the adrenaline rush, and there's nothing, no adventure. The person is going to be bored. Yeah, it's a nice day, but it's boring. But Hisattvas are like that. On the day when everything goes smoothly, it's like, no, 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 no. That's not what we voted for, right? We need a rough day. But Yesattvas really want that rough day because, wow, then they're happy. There is a lot of opportunities to enhance their practice, right? Otherwise, they just get bored. I mean, not but Hisattvas, but like adventurous person gets bored, right? And happy to have some kind of situation where adrenaline rushes and like, yes, now it's adventure. So Bodhisattva welcomes in the same way all these difficulties and problems, the kind of roughness of the day, being happy about it, really.
da kengen di thena nyamlen di bok de grace la bare bok den sena injikele gyutu enhance
Enhance
okay
practice. The Eriki, the Jake Gyuri, but Khenpo, if you have a better.
inside enhance inside
The Namgyung teaches, but yeah, we in the Dharma it is said that these troubles, when we face with troubles, it enhances our spiritual practice. There's a very specific term in Tibetan that really makes us progress in our spiritual path, right? This kind of Bogdon means this enhances, it boosts our practice. So all these troubles and roughness and problems actually boost our practice.
tene ta tingsang yaksho de mi zo kar la yesen da ti thesang di free la wa kom gave ta kengen ba the da de thesang de free la wa nga zo nyo ko go ma da di yang tingsang di ke chum si do wa
The best thing that these days it's all this practice of opportunity to practice meditation based on all the difficulties is free. No, we don't need to go and buy it, this kind of troubles. We don't need to look for them. It's just right there. It's like available and free. Did you repeat?
la re la tingsang free de ke chum do wa
And these days, something being for free is really important, right? It's great. It's free.
la so ta tene chidang 퇴바 당 곰바세 디 빼닝 제부 지샤요래 아주 추억이 값으라 차상 고그래 해서 봐 퇴바 메비 곰바디 간데레스나니 락둠 달라 제버나신 지레스다 퇴바 짠이 메와 제니드니 곰갑샤바이나야 따와 연구 말아 봐 젠두다 락바 메교 미직 달라 자고 되나 코타 탑시데 제조그러 봐 이나 시라시라 야게 용카보 연구로 봐 디부터베 가고요 되니 곰바 메비 퇴바디 추부세네 증바다 asla bare 다양 럽종 망보지지 퇴바 망보지지 되니 곰 소소기 곰 마투바이나 당 아주 미지기 빼 깔리 망보 겸니 균노 롱제 망보지 사 이내야 시라 그 세나기 찍니더니 칼라사 마투 베제 땅 마투 시송 바이나 촐라로 봐 가까이 핑기 말어 봐 데니 빼닝제부터 시작
In the Dharma, we have really beautiful metaphors to illustrate the two processes that are so important to study the Dharma and to practice the Dharma, right? In one way, we have studying, and another way, we have, meditation. And the metaphor or analogy is that when we try to practice meditation without having done much study, right? It's like trying to climb the mountain, the rock, while not having hands. Of course, we can try to climb without having hands. That's surely possible to try, but we're not going to probably succeed easily. So same is kind of trying to meditate, but without really having knowledge that comes from studies, is like that. And vice versa, when we study a lot, but we haven't really put that knowledge into practice, is like being an extremely rich person who is bound by stinginess and not able to enjoy the riches, right? So having studied much, but then not meditating on that, what we have learned, is like accumulating so much wealth, possessions, and then being so miserly and stingy that we can't spend even on a good meal. And then we die like kind of in that state when we have all that money, but we haven't used them for anything whatsoever. What a waste, right? So that's kind of like accumulating knowledge, but not really meditating. That's also that waste.
데니 빼찍디다 퇴바세디 믹나신 진슬라와 만줄라 믹디메나 안 가와토고 그예면 하고 말아 다 퇴바 메비기 콤바세디 믹메와체 수부 셴바 깡바든 주 여바 있는데니 가와 가살라 도데바네 렙고사데 렙톡 말아 뒤세 망고지고 그래 양 곰바세데 깡발레 빼샤 버래 아니 미델라양 미깡바 여바지 깡바 메바이네 다 미기 데도고도 파 렙고도 스네 차상 삼박영양 땅데마도 저기 스스에게 삼바데라 가와네 렙토고입니다 와 당 아주 럽종 망보장 냠레 맞에 바이나 되니 지 덴데 차기레 디제나 덴데 차기레선 디시게 마도 저기 아니 소소 가야 차야 메바지 차르고도 와 깡바 메베서라고 지
Also in the Dharma, it is said that studying, it's having acquired knowledge from studying is like having eyesight, a very good, sharp eyesight, and knowing where then to go and seeing it. But meditation, nevertheless, is the legs. So now what happens is if we have not, no, let's see. Okay, have to assemble this correctly. So in one way, if we have only eyesight but no legs, that's to say we studied a lot, but we're not practicing, we're not going to get far, right? We see where to go, but we have no legs to go. And vice versa is then when we have legs, but we are blind. That's to say that we're ready to meditate, rushing into it, but we don't have real vision, right? We haven't really learned enough, then we don't have that vision or eyesight, then we're also not going to get far just by practicing without studying. So in this way, we really need both.
데니 다 쪼디다 곰세디 아주 셈라 곰고거래 다 가르치는 곰고거래스람나 나란수 셈들의 균지 차지여라 셈들의 윤된지 차지여라스라 말해 니가 요래 랑제수 데니 이네 양다 윤된기 차디 명은 받제네 균게 차디 차상야 슈청버지 응용도 아주로 둥한 망버지 되니 용거래스라 말해 봐 데니 다 균게 차디 마 곰니 뇽도 땅니 윤된기 차디 야도스야 게축바이나 아니 나란수 대화 용거여라 세딜라이나 대화다 치말라이나 되니 다도 탈보고 방 톱도 그래스 다 돌디나 돈다도 gom gyab goye ge gyumsin nangwa sanje be gom gyab goye gyumsin so de chi focus dang memory dang productivity dang de kyangwa mare ta di din ne ka bro wa ngoni de ta mi yu zo di dire di je di samala ta tor dina karre kawalo gom go gore sem ki kyöngi 차디 nyungdo tang nyumong sekro wa anaso chege na ani semgi yenden cha da yishe sekro wa andi kongbeldo tang wala gomgyo yara da gomse chasang de chula dor duisha na ani de ni la pa gomete la karichige yoresno gom sekre.
Now, meditation, so in the very traditional Buddhist way of talking about meditation, has mainly to do with the mind. And we need to understand then why do we need to really meditate or kind of work with our minds? Well, it is said that our minds have these two aspects, two sides that kind of inherently build in the faulty one, the faulty aspects, and the kind of the aspect of the qualities, so of faults and qualities. And what happens when we don't meditate is that that kind of aspects of the faults, they reveal themselves, they are much more present and evident, where the qualities are much more suppressed and not really manifested, right? And that's what we call suffering in the Buddha Dharma. That's really what we meant by, okay, well, that's suffering. Now, the reason for us then to practice that, to meditate, is to lessen the aspect of the faults, right? And to build up on the aspect of the qualities that are already there, already present in our mind stream, just not revealed, right? Not emphasized in our life. So we need to, if we really lessen the faults and sort of make the qualities grow more and more, what is achieved then is happiness or well-being. And from that, happiness and well-being, we go even further and achieve a complete freedom, known as the sort of state of awakening. We achieve full potential awakening, state of liberation. That's the main reason of meditating for the Buddhists. It's not really only like having good memory, developing focus, or improving one's productivity. All of that is sort of side effect. It's not the main reason, right? In short, the main reason is to lessen the mind's faults, which in the Dharmic language we call afflictive emotions, disturbing states of mind, and to increase, to kind of already make the qualities, which is our wakefulness, our awareness that's already present, we make it grow and make it bloom more and more. And so this process then of lessening disturbing states of mind and making a wakefulness manifest is known as meditation.
Ta tinde ki tablam dume ki koni rangi sem ki kyoncha di nyungro tanya dang yenden cha di gongbel tanya ki process chi yorwa o dila kari segi ware sana ta nga zo chuzik la che bayi na sem dul segi ware sem dul was di nga zo kasa ten che se ge nangi che se dan di karang re ten di sangi chumden deki yan dini che ki zuzi che ba nala che ki nyingbo dawa di kare rangi sem ni yongsu dul dini sangi tenpa yin sani ta tarba di dus top go ware ten namba sangi bege ta taba top su ki zawa dawa chi nyingbo dawa chi cha degi ware.
So we do that, we engage in that practice of meditation, which is what I explained, right? Meditation, lessening, decreasing disturbing emotions, and increasing wakefulness and awareness and qualities of our mind by using different skillful means, various manifold skillful means, right? And that process then, using various means, is known also as taming our mind, making it more gentle, more peaceful. This is what we meant by that last part of the word treatise, che, to transform, right? When I started the teachings today saying like shastra, it means to transform. One meaning is transformation. This is transformation. This is taming the mind. And that's the essence of the whole Buddha Dharma, of the all teachings of the Buddha come down to this, because he himself has stated, right? In taming your own mind, that's the teachings of the Buddha. So this taming of the mind is this practice of meditation, right, of transformation, which is the root, the cause of us achieving liberation.
다 대양 되는 남중한수 책도 돌듯이하도 딘데기 곰디 타르치용도 가리랍 거스는 상기 스님 랍여 봐. 상스나 가르레 괜찮상 매바 차송 받을. 게스나 연된 영수 쪽바 토바 타르친 받을라 가리세 거스나 상기 다 상기 스리디 있는 가족이나다 미기 명도 가야 말고 빵도디 타르친 받기 내갑들라 아니 다 상기 스님 다셔. 곰디 타르친 용도 제부들라.
And in short, when we perfect, master our practice of meditation, the result will be what is known as result of being a Buddha. And we need to understand what we mean by this term Buddha, right? In Tibetan, it's very clearly, rendered Sangye. Again, two words right there. When Buddha was translated into Tibetan, these two words have very deep connotation. Sang means to purify all these faulty aspects, getting rid of these difficult, disturbing, afflictive emotions. And Gye, the second part of the word Buddha, means expanding all the qualities, blooming, letting them bloom, right? So Buddha in this way doesn't mean just like a name of a person, like, being Buddha doesn't mean like just a title giving to someone. Becoming a Buddha exactly means that perfecting this abandonment of all the faults and perfecting, realization of all the qualities of wisdom, of awareness. So perfection, mastery of this, what is to be abandoned, what is to be really perfected, is Buddha. And that's the result of practice of meditation.
라서 다들인 도르티나 네 가상 아주 뜻밭이 걸었더니 칠레미든 돌라든 당들레미든 예들라든 남실레미든 예실라든 세든 아주 도식 상도당도나 양티시 아부도 세대 개나마게 럽종자 아니 도다 딘주든서 로용도 가르선다 릭슈민다와 차대도 아니 니바데 땅은서 검중기 시랍세디 디니 검중기 시랍세디 쪼었다 퇴중기 시랍당 삼중기 시랍디기 땡돌라 아니 중샤비기 니셰들라 냠바샤바들라 검중기 시랍세교레 세지당 아니 지당 다들라 곰세디드니 된다 간디질라고 그래 되게 차긴도 저 가래가래 곰백값을랑 아주 곰메기다 가래가래 베줬단 그래 세다 된조콜라 니드린 도디슈바이 아니 주든지만 아닌 아주 마음이든 슈게인스.
Well, that's it for today. Let's give a little summary what we have talked about today. We started by going again through a few of reliances from last class, mainly not to rely on the words, but rely on the meaning, rely not on the provisional meaning, but the definitive one, and not rely on our dualistic conceptual mind, but on our primordial wakefulness. And this is important for us to understand and remember, because what we are really concerned with here, like by studying and reading and learning about the sutras and treatises, is also different culture, not only words, but different culture, different backgrounds. So we need to understand, we need to have guidelines how to approach this different culture. And this reliances are great guidelines for all of us. Then we continued and we looked at the third wisdom, the one that comes from meditation, the one that actually rests on the previous two wisdoms, or one that comes from studying and reflection. Because what happens with this type of insight is that what is really meant by this wisdom is that we take the certainty that we have gained from the previous two processes of studying and reflecting, we take that certainty and we continuously meditate on it. We sustain our awareness and practice of meditation on the object of that certainty. That's how we then acquire the wisdom that comes from meditation. And then we looked at what we actually mean by this term meditation, right? What is it in terms of the Buddha Dharma? We also looked at what are the different tools, different ways to engage in meditation. So, what do we really use as Buddhists when it comes to the practice of meditation? So then we will stop here, and in the next Dharma session, we will just continue from with this topic.
Janju Samju Rinpoche Mage Panamage Gyureche Keba Nyambara Mebaya Gone Gondo Pelabara Sho